Here. Good morning. It's Wednesday, May the 19th, and this is The Drill. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. My name is Ron, your host and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today we're going to be reading from the Daily Declarations for Spiritual Warfare, then the Pledge of Allegiance, and then the National Anthem, and a lot more. All that when I come back. Thank you. May 19th, I am the God of the valleys. My child, do not be afraid of the valleys that seem too big for you to conquer, for I am the God of the valleys. Remember my servant Gideon, who faced the host of Midianites who came against him in the valley. Do not try to come against the enemy in your valley experiences in your own strength. Just as the strength of the Midianites was too great for Gideon, so the power of the enemy is too great for you if you fight in your own strength. Do not fear the enemy. You will defeat your enemies just as Gideon did, by obeying my word and by following my instructions. Pick up your torches and trumpet and declare the victory is yours by the sword of the Lord. I will defeat your valley enemies in my power and will cause your enemies to flee. Prayer declaration. Lord, you are the God of the valleys. Cast out every valley spirit through the mighty power of your sword. I will arise in your power with my torch and my trumpet, and I will declare the victory is mine through the power of the sword of the Lord. Amen. And now we will have the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. Thank you, and please remain standing now for the playing of the star-spangled, the singing actually, of the Star-Spangled Banner. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now I'm going to be reading from Live Not by Lies. It's a section of the chapter 5, called Choose a Life Apart from the Crowd. He had, the first section of the book was about describing the problem, and this section is about what to do about it. And the first section was to live in the truth. And so this is called Choose a Life Apart from the Crowd. I am sitting at the luncheon table of Father Kirill Kaleda inside the toasty, warm wooden building that serves as his office. The late autumn snow fell outside over the Betovo firing range, the field in the forested far southern reaches of Moscow, where, in a 14-month period between 1937 and 1938, agents of the NKVD, secret police, executed about 21,000 political prisoners, among them 1,000 priests and bishops. Thanks to the advocacy work of Father Kirill, the field is now a national monument to the dead. On the day I visited, Russian citizens gathered outside in the cold to solemnly read aloud the names of each murdered countryman to honor their memories and to remember what Soviet totalitarianism had done to them. How does an honest man live under totalitarianism? I asked the priest, a broad-shouldered man with a thick brown beard and piercing eyes. With difficulty, he says, laughing. Of course, it's difficult, but thanks be to God, there were people who were willing to do their best to build their lives in such a way that they could live in truth. People understood that if it was going to be a priority to live in truth, then they were going to have to limit themselves in other ways. The progress of their careers, for example. But they made a choice and they resolved to live by it. Father Kirill grew up in an Orthodox Christian family with 6 children. None joined the Communist Youth League, the Komsomol. When I was a teenager, I wanted to study history, he says. My father explained to me that in the Soviet world, trying to be involved with history and not be involved with Soviet ideology is impossible. So I became a geologist. Lots of anti-Bolshevik families sent their children to study the natural sciences to avoid contamination with the ideology as much as possible. Refusing to join the Komsomol meant that he would not be permitted to travel abroad. Once, as a student, Father Kirill was offered an exciting ship voyage from Vladivostok on the Soviet East Coast down to Australia, Singapore, up through the Suez Canal, and back home through the Black Sea. It was a dream come true. But he would have to be a Komsomol member to take the trip. Rather than violate his conscience, Kirill declined and proposed a Komsomol friend in his place. The sea journey changed his friend's life. To this day, that friend does a lot of traveling across seas and oceans, the priest remembers. He, by contrast, tends this garden of sacred memory and pastors the new church built nearby in honor of the martyrs of the Soviet yoke. 2 days later, I sat in a cafe in the heart of Moscow listening to Yuri Sipko, a retired Baptist pastor. In his village classroom in the 1950s in Siberia, Sipko and his classmates were given a badge with a portrait of Lenin. At age 11, the children were given the red scarf of the young pioneers. Be ready, always be ready was the slogan of the pioneers. I didn't wear the pin with Lenin's face, nor did I wear the red scarf. I was a Baptist. I wasn't going to do that, recalls Sipko. I was the only one in my class. They went after my teachers. They wanted to know what they were doing wrong, that they had a boy in their class who wasn't a pioneer. They pressured the director of the school, too. They were forced to pressure me to save themselves. To be a Baptist in Soviet Russia was to know that you were a permanent outsider. They endured it because they knew the truth was embodied in Jesus Christ, and that to live apart from him would mean living a lie. For the Baptists, to compromise with lies for the sake of peaceful life is to bend at the knee to death. When I think about the past and how our brothers were sent to prison and never returned, I'm sure that this is the kind of certainty they had, says the old pastor. They lost any kind of status. They were mocked and ridiculed in society. Sometimes they even lost their children. Just because they were Baptists, the state was willing to take away their kids and send them to orphanages. These believers were unable to find jobs. Their children were not able to enter universities, and still they believed. The Baptists stood alone, but stand they did. And if you have been disciplined in a faith that takes seriously the Apostle Paul's words that to suffer for Christ is gain, and are prepared, as the Orthodox Kaleda family was, to live with reduced expectations of worldly success, it becomes easier to stand for the truth. So what he's really getting at here, the essence of what he's talking about, is you can't have your cake and eat it too. That's the metaphysical reality, that you are going to have to make tough choices. And there are going to be people in your life that are going to try and convince you that you don't have to make tough choices. The first one that springs to mind is former President Obama. He wanted to create a system some type of a medical system that would put you in a position as an individual to not have to make tough choices. He bemoaned the fact. He whined about the fact that there are people that have to choose between making their insurance payments and paying their rent, or paying for their medical bills and paying their rent. And all Obama's going to do, and has done with the Affordable Care Act, is change the nature of the decisions that you're going to have to make. You still have to make tough choices. Sometimes those tough choices have to do with medical care. Sometimes the tough choices have to do with something else. But the fact is, in life, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't be in two places at the same time. And so you have to make a decision. And that's what he's emphasizing here in the book, is that they can either honor Jesus Christ, they can honor the truth, or they can get along in society. But not both. So they have to choose. And so do I, and so do you. If you're a true conservative, you recognize that fundamental reality. Because again, the essence of being a conservative is being realistic. And that means acknowledging the fact that that we always have to make choices. Every day, thousands of times a day, we've got to make choices. But some of those choices that we're going to have to make in our lives are going to be pretty tough. But choose we must. The left tries to convince you that that's not so, that if you use your imagination, if you use psychological tools, tactics, and tricks, that you can have your cake and eat it too, that you don't have to make those choices, that you can be a dissident and get along in society at the same time. And you see that in Portland. You have people that are part-time revolutionaries. Whenever they get the chance, whenever the time is right, whenever they have enough money, they run out and try to burn things down. But at the same time, when they're done with that, because everybody has to go to sleep sometime, they go home, and you can bet your sweet bippy that if they go home and their house has been broken into, their apartment has been broken into, that they're going to do what? They're going to call the police. Because that's the ultimate arrogance, is they actually expect to have their cake and eat it too. That they can go out and try and burn down a police station and then go home and call the police when things go wrong, and otherwise go about their lives. Get up the next day, go to their Starbucks, go to whatever college they're going to, and that's part of the reason we have so much of the anarchist activity in this country, is because of the shutdowns. You notice that you don't see this anarchist activity in Florida, for instance. Only in the places where there's heavy-handed government shutdowns, because the people are getting unemployment, because they don't have any jobs to go to, and they don't have to go to school. Idle hands are the devil's workshop. But the point is that these fools think that they're going to have their cake and eat it too. That on the one hand, they're going to be a revolutionary, and on the other hand, they're going to live like a normal, regular citizen. And they're not. Because you're ineffective at both. It's a bad idea psychologically, and it's a bad idea metaphysically. So you can't have your cake and eat it too. You've got to make tough choices. If you're going to be, and that was the difference between what goes on now and in the 60s, when you had the Weather Underground and organizations, terrorist organizations such as that. These were people that dedicated their lives to it. They made, had a little pretend life as a cover story, but basically they devoted their lives to trying to the violent overthrow of the government. They made whatever sacrifices they needed to make, whereas the so-called revolutionaries in our society today think they don't have to. I can have it both ways. I can revolutionize our society and yet live in it and, to a certain extent, honor it at the same time. And you can't. But there's going to be those politicians that will tell you, like President Obama, oh yes, you can. All you have to do is have a good attitude. You close your eyes, click your heels together 3 times, and say there's no place like home, and like magic, you're going to end up in Kansas again. No such thing. Back in a minute. Thank you very much. And now back to the book. Now I'm going to read from the section called See, Judge, and Act. The dictatorship of thought and word under construction by progressives, so-called progressives, they're actually Crowleyists, is a regime based on lies and propaganda. Most conservatives, Christian and not, recognize that to some degree, but too few see the deeper ramifications of accepting these lies. Political correctness is an annoyance. These lies corrupt one's ability to think clearly about reality. Once you perceive how the system runs on lies, stand as firmly as you can on what you know to be true and real when confronted by those lies. Refuse to let the media and institutions propagandize your children. Teach them how to identify lies and to refuse them. Do your best not to be party to the lie, not for the sake of professional advantage, personal status, or any other reason. Sometimes you'll have to act openly to confront the lie directly. Other times you will fight it by remaining silent and withholding the approval authorities request. You might have to raise your voice to defend someone who is being slandered by propagandists. Judging when and how to confront the lie depends on individual circumstances, of course. As Father Kalaitis says, the faith does not require one to actively seek opportunities for martyrdom. Most of us will be forced by circumstances and responsibilities to our families to be something less than a Solzhenitsyn. That doesn't necessarily make us cowards. But take care not to let reasoning prudentially turn into rationalization. That is the basis of Ketman. And to surrender to that kind of self-defense will, over time, destroy your soul. Your consent to the system's lies might buy you safety, but at an unbearable cost. If you cannot imagine any situation in which you would act like Havel's fictional greengrocer and live in truth no matter the cost or consequences, then cowardice has a greater claim on your conscience than you know. A society's values are carried in the stories it chooses to tell about itself and in the people it wishes to honor. Havel's greengrocer is a myth that teaches us a lesson about the importance of bearing witness to the truth, no matter what. The real-life stories of national heroes and lesser-known resistors tell the same story. All of these stories are also important to tell and retell as a guide to others, including those generations as yet unborn. Totalitarians, both soft and hard, know this, which is why they exert such effort to control the common narrative. And that's the end of chapter 5. But I did want to say that the way that the Crowleyists in our society, and I refuse to call them progressives because if you concede and call them progressive and you're anti-progressive, what does that make you by default? Regressive. Okay, so don't give them that kind of power. Refer to them as to what they are, Crowleyists. Herbert Crowley was the guy that started all this progressive nonsense. So anyway, so the Crowleyists, the way that they're able to get you to accept lies and live by lies is by trying to convince you or succeeding in convincing you that everything is a lie. That it's all a lie. That everything you've been taught, now they're even saying that 2 + 2 = 4 is a lie. So if it's all a lie, then it's only a question of which lie that you're going to accept and live by. And if they can convince you that their lie is more moral, less damaging, it leads to something special, okay, or convince you that by living your present lie, you're aiding and abetting something bad or evil, or even to simply say, you need to live our lie instead of the lie you're currently living, because otherwise we will crush you. Just a good old-fashioned threat. So, you need to be aware of that, and again, work to shield yourself from the effects of it. So, but recognize it first and foremost. All this business, again, 2 + 2 = 4 is a white construct, is just simply saying everything's a lie and it's a matter of power. So that's the only question is which power construct, which arbitrary construct are you going to follow? And it's not true. You got to seek the truth at all times, and when you get it, hang on to it. Back in a minute. Thank you. That brings me to the conclusion of another episode of The Drill. And until next time, be honest, be smart, and be beautiful. And remember that the left has no authority, no power, and they can't win.